friends, and happy NFL Rule Change Day. My name is Derek Persley. This is Talking Sports at Work. Today is Tuesday, March the 26th, and it is raining today, so I might not be, for one, this is going to be a short episode, and I know I say that a lot, but it really is today. But we do have a lot to talk about. We've got at least 3 new rules in the NFL that are ranging from interesting to good decision to what the hell. And we've also got March Madness to discuss. My Vols are still looking good, but we got a tough test against Creighton. A lot to talk about there. A lot to talk about with the draft coming up as well. Some surprising possibilities going on there. So, I noticed something over the last couple of days that was interesting to me. Because I didn't think a lot of people were listening to the podcast, because I really only check it on, check the analytics, the stats on the Spotify for Podcasters platform, which is the one I use to create it. But then I noticed that a lot of people, I guess, have been listening to it on YouTube, because it also syncs up with the YouTube thing. And if I set and it makes its own little videos where, it's not like a video, but those of you who are watching it on YouTube now know what I'm talking about. It basically just shows the cover image for that episode, and, you hear my voice. And a lot of people have evidently been listening to it on there, which was surprising to me. So, with that being said, I'll just gonna go over really quickly to any new listeners. The premise here is pretty much in the title. I drive for a living, and on my way to and from my route, it takes a while for me to get from my station where I start to where I actually work and deliver. So it's over an hour both ways. So on the way there and sometimes on the way back, I talk. I talk to myself a lot of the time anyway when I'm in the car. So I thought I might as well just record it, right? I'll talk about sports. We'll do a podcast. So that's what we're doing here. And so anyway, sorry, like I said, today's raining, so I gotta pay attention. But, this is all, hands-free. I'm not actually looking at, a camera. Anytime I look at stats or, notes or whatever, I pull over to do that. So, and it's all completely safe, and, that's definitely a priority. So, with all that being said, I'm gonna take a quick break, and we will dive into all this cool shit going on today. Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So, there's actually, I pulled over when I took my little break there to look at my notes, because I actually got quite a bit that I wanted to go over today, but I don't know if I'll have time, because I didn't even start until I've only got 30 minutes until I'm at my destination. So we're going to try to talk fast today and dive into as much as we can. And I might, if I feel like I need to, then I might continue it in the afternoon or the evening, but we'll see. Anyway, I wanted to talk. There's a lot I've been thinking about with the draft. I absolutely love what the Titans have done in free agency and addressed several needs already before the draft. And there's a lot of talk about maybe some unexpected stuff happening in those top few picks. And I think the Titans might be there at 7 and one of the better prime positions to potentially trade down. So I think that is a very real possibility for us. But I was going to go over a lot of that in more detail. Also got some interesting stuff going on with betting. Jontay Porter, who is Michael Porter Jr.'s brother. I, honest to God, had never heard of this dude until this morning. They were talking about he is in maybe some real hot water because he left games early complaining of either illness or injury, and he left these games right before he hit his prop stat numbers, like for rebounds and points. And this has a lot of people curious, and that's like Pete Rose level stuff. So that's very interesting. Also, Shohei Ohtani is in some hot water, and some stuff that's going on there does not make any sense. They've changed their story a couple times now, and I don't know if you're following the stuff with his translator, but his translator is $4.5 million in debt with gambling debts, and apparently Shohei agreed to help his friend out and pay off those debts. And then now, a couple days after they announced that, they say, well, no, that wasn't what happened. He actually stole the money, and Shohei had nothing to do with it. This was all behind his back. and now there are lawyers and police and investigators involved, and but a lot of the details in that don't add up at all. So that's something also very interesting. But I don't think any of that we really need to dive into in much more detail, or if we do, we'll do that in the next couple of days maybe. But there's a lot going on in football. There's also a lot going on in college basketball. The biggest news I think today is the rule changes in the NFL. Three that we know of so far. One that I just saw announced a few minutes ago is something that I really like and think they should have done last year, and that's moving the trade deadline out to week 9 instead of week 8. I mean, they extended the regular season by another week, so it just makes sense that they should push the trade deadline out a little further. So I'm glad they did that. One that's just kind of puzzling to me is this new kickoff thing, which I honestly don't even understand the specifics of it, but apparently the kicker is still going to be at the 35-yard line, but now the rest of the team can be lined up at the 40-yard line, and nobody can move except the kicker or the returner before the kick, and you can't fair catch anymore. They got rid of that, and some touchbacks are now, I think at the 30-yard line instead of the 25. So apparently what they're trying to do, and this is evidently what the XFL does, what they're trying to do is encourage more kickoffs, but still, kickoffs being returned, but still somehow avoid injuries, which is stupid because that was the whole point of all the rule changes they made anyway, was to get more touchbacks and have fewer returns because that's where a lot of injuries happen. So now it's like they're trying to, sit on the fence or have their cake and eat it too, and it doesn't make any sense to me. But, whatever. I've been saying for the last couple of years now, there's absolutely no reason for a team to ever return a kick. All that can happen is something bad. You never really get positive yards, and if you do, you might get out to the 30. But you get holding, you get block in the back, you get injuries, and there's just, But now that they've taken this fair catch element out, maybe there's going to be more reason to return them. Maybe, kickers are probably going to try to avoid the touchback and giving it to them on the 30. So I don't know. We'll see. But the one that really jumps out at me, and I think everybody, is the new hip drop thing. I don't know how they are going to enforce this, and they're just continually, every couple of years, making it more and more impossible to play defense. Now, I get it. I get why they are doing this. It's logical. It makes sense. That kind of tackle does, create a lot of injuries, and apparently they're not fully outlawing the hip drop tackle, which in my opinion is a tackle. That's what it is. I mean, that's how you tackle, but they're only outlawing the swivel hip drop or hip swivel drop tackle. I don't fucking know, but anyway, they are only eliminating this one element where you grab a hold with both arms and then you swivel your hips in order to basically land on the guy's legs. And if that's really what they're trying to get rid of, then that's cool. That's fine. It's still going to be even harder to play defense, but that's just going to be the case, and that's just going to keep getting worse, I think. You get penalized now for anything on defense. You hit them too hard, you hit them too high, you hit them too low, you hit them the wrong way, you grab them the wrong way. I mean, it's very, very difficult to play defense, but at the same time, with all the injuries we saw last year, especially to quarterbacks, now I don't know how much this rule specifically is going to impact the quarterback position because it's not something you see a lot on quarterbacks. It's, something you see on runners. But I get it. I mean, you want to avoid injuries however possible. But I also I totally understand why defensive players and defensive coaches are going to be frustrated with this. It's just, even more, just one more little thing on the, on this pile of stuff that makes it impossible to play defense. Excuse me. But, if they really are able to enforce it that way where, you can still tackle, wrap tackle, hip drop, but as long as you don't swivel onto the guy's legs, then okay, I'm cool with that. And if you're a defensive player, like I said, I get why you would not be okay with it. Why, but you're the one who's playing that side of the ball, and it's just going to get worse. So anyway, We've got some other stuff to talk about too that is probably going to be more interesting for me anyway. I wanted to go over some possibilities for the Titans in the draft and also talk about some of the moves they've made, which again, I absolutely love. So I'm going to take a really quick break and I'll be right back. Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So, fans of the YouTube channel will know that I've already done my first round mock draft. Well, picks 1 through 20 at least. But I'm going to do that again because that I did both of those, the 1 through 10 and then 11 through 20 videos before free agency, and a lot has changed now. And I knew all along I was going to do, at least one, maybe two more mock drafts between now and then. But just I wanted to because I was doing this yesterday just in my own head while I was driving, not doing the podcast, but just thinking about it on my own. There are a lot of possibilities the way things could go in the top 10. And so I just want to go over, I don't know if you'd necessarily call it another little mini mock draft, but just the way that I expect things to go, because it really is important for, well, everybody in the top 10, but, my Titans are the ones that I'm most concerned with. Excuse me. First, though, I just want to say I absolutely love what Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan have done so far with the additions to this team. Most recently, L'Jarius Sneed, and it's crazy because this is exactly what I said I think we should be willing to give up for him. A lot of people were saying, that he's probably worth a second round pick. I said I don't know that I would want us to give up a second round pick for us. He's a very good player. He can be, our number one corner coming in, but it's going to cost a lot of money to re-sign him, and you're going to give up the draft capital. I just don't know. So I may have even said this on the podcast. I know I said it to my friend or my mom, maybe I was talking to about it, but exactly what I said was I feel like if we could get him for a third round pick, that would be perfect. But the problem is we don't have our third round pick this year because we traded. It was part of the trade to move up and get Levis last year. So I don't know that we're going to be able to get him because they're not going to take a fourth round pick for him, and I didn't think that they would be willing to take next year's third round pick for him, and I didn't really think we should give up more than a third round pick for him. And I even said too, because the talk was that the holdup here is not so much in what the Chiefs are wanting in exchange. It was the L'Jarius Sneed, his own contract demands, because whoever trades for him is going to have to then sign him to a long-term deal. But the problem was he was apparently asking for well over $20 million a year. And I was even saying, I feel like if we could get him for a third round pick and then, under 20 million, probably upper teens per year on a 3 or 4 year deal, that would be perfect. And then what happens? That's exactly what we did. They took next year's third round pick, which I know the consensus around the league and the media was that was pretty much a steal to get a guy of his caliber for next year's third round pick. And, I heard one thing too, and this was on some radio station I was listening to, I think on Saturday, where they were discussing this trade, and this guy was saying, he hates this idea that next year's picks are less valuable than this year's pick, and how picks for the current year are always so much more valuable or considered to be so much more valuable than picks for the following year. And he doesn't think that's true, and that should not be the case because these picks could be even better the next year. The thing about that is hardly any of these GMs and coaches are in the sort of stable position that, Brett Veach and Andy Reid are in Kansas City, or, maybe John Harbaugh and what's his name in Baltimore. Most of the coaches around the leagues don't even know for sure, or GMs and coaches don't even know for sure that they're going to have 2 years. So no, picks this year are always going to be more valuable to 90% of the teams in the league, especially because you don't even know. If you have a really bad season, you might not still be able to, the one making that pick next year. So I think that's kind of idiotic to talk about how the value should not decrease for a pick next year. Of course it should. But the consensus around the league is exactly what I was thinking, that this is almost kind of a steal to get L'Jarius Sneed, a guy who is a number one corner, who is a veteran and from all accounts a really good leader type guy, and has that Super Bowl experience to, bring in a winner like that. So I think this was an all around great deal. Great that we got him for next year's third round pick. Great that he didn't cost an outrageous amount to re sign, and a great addition to the defense. So I absolutely love it. And then my favorite move of all, which this is kind of polarized opinions. I've heard some people who love it, some people who hate it. I love Calvin Ridley. He was number one on my list all along of guys who I wanted the Titans to sign in free agency. And I know that he's not, he's already approaching 30 and that he, maybe didn't produce quite as much as some people had hoped last year, but he was over 1,000 yards receiving last year. And this is a guy who just a few years ago was on his way to being one of the elite receivers in football. He had the mental health issues. He had the gambling thing where he, missed 2 full seasons of football because of that. And I think also missed a big part of another one because of injury. So if not for those things, this would be a guy I'm confident who is thought of as one of the best receivers in football. And he's the entire reason that the Falcons were comfortable trading away Julio because they knew they had him. So I absolutely love Calvin Ridley. He's a guy who also, when I'm playing Madden on my franchise mode, I always sign him. So I am so excited about that and kind of the way that it happened that, supposed to be he was either going to the Patriots or going back to the Jaguars, and then out of nowhere we swoop in and grab him. And you could say that we paid too much for him. I don't think we did because that's the way this shit goes, man. People, you hear it every single offseason, people bitching about, wow, that guy's not worth that much. Yes, he is, because that's how much he got. The salary cap goes up every year. The salary cap went up even more than expected this year. So all of these contracts are going to seem like more than what anybody has ever seen in the past. That's why every time a new good quarterback is re-signed, it's a record-breaking deal. So these deals like Lloyd Cushenberry, is he the best center in the league? No, of course not. But he's good, and now he is the highest paid center in the league in terms of, I think it was per year or guaranteed, I don't know. But anyway, it was a record-breaking deal for a center because he's pretty good, because the salary cap has gone up a significant amount, and because that's the way this stuff goes. And it's the same way with Calvin Ridley. You want a guy like that, you're going to have to pay more than what it might seem like his market value is compared to contracts that were signed last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. That's just the way this is. So no, I don't think we overpaid for him at all. I don't think we overpaid L'Jarius Sneed or Lloyd Cushenberry at all. We had the money. We've got a quarterback on a rookie contract. We had a ton of cap space, and I think we are spending it very, very effectively. So I love all of those additions. I got to be honest, the first signing we made, I wasn't crazy about at first, and that's Tony Pollard, because it's not that I don't like him, but it didn't make sense to sign a guy who we've already got. It feels like a carbon copy of him in Tyjae Spears, right? It felt like if we were going to sign another running back, it was going to be someone to be more of the Derrick Henry type, more of that bruiser, first and second down back. But really, in Brian Callahan's offense, which is going to be similar to the Zach Taylor offense in Cincinnati, it is a pass-first offense, and maybe it does make sense to have 2 of those guys who are your modern 3-down running backs, who are versatile, who can run the ball on first and second down, or who can stay out there on third down and catch the ball and block. So maybe it makes sense to have 2 of those guys as opposed to, the traditional thunder and lightning approach. So the more I've thought about it, the more I'm okay with it. Now, it's worth noting that I, as pretty much every other fan, have this thing in my brain that allows me to not necessarily be delusional, but to sort of convince myself that maybe things are better than they are, or that, a move that maybe is not great is actually okay, or, because if your team does it, you're eventually going to like it. If you signed this guy, even if you weren't crazy about him at first, you will come to like him. I hated Will Levis going into the draft. I thought he is not, I don't know why they're talking about this guy as a top 10 pick. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think he is the worst of those top 4 quarterbacks that they were talking about. I even said that I thought maybe Hendon Hooker might end up being a better NFL quarterback. Now, I love Will Levis. That's the way this stuff goes. Now, really the reason for that is more because of the way he's actually performed and proven me wrong. But it's just, we convince ourselves. It's just like, yeah, I was talking the other day about how delusional Jets fans are, and how I heard a Jet fan, actually a prominent media member on Fox Sports Radio, talking about how he thought the Jets were definitely the best team in the AFC East. That's ridiculous. That's so stupid. But we convince ourselves of these things. Now, so it's hard for me sometimes to separate what is something I really like objectively as a move or a signing, an addition, a trade, a draft pick, whatever, and what is just me convincing myself that it's for the best. Because honestly, I've spent the last few years having to convince myself that these things were good moves, especially in the draft. If you go back and look at our draft, John Robinson's last couple of draft classes, they were god awful. I mean, let me see if I can find that actually, because I'm pulled over right now anyway. Let me see. I'm going to Google Titans draft classes. I saw a post the other day of a guy who had posted just an image of the 2021 and 2022, I think it was, draft classes of John Robinson, and they were just horrible. And okay, here we go. Let's go back. 2020 draft class: Isaiah Wilson, Christian Fulton, Darrington Evans, Laryl Murchison, Cole McDonald, the Hawaii quarterback, and a safety, Chris Jackson from Marshall. None of those guys are still on the team. The longest one was Christian Fulton, and I even said at that point that he was the one pick in that draft that I really liked, because up until a couple months before the draft, he was talked about as a first-round pick. So I thought that we got a good one there. I wasn't crazy about any of the other ones, but I had high hopes for Isaiah Wilson, and we know how that turned out. Then you go to 2021, round one, Caleb Farley. All right. Hey, friend. Sorry about that. I had a timer go off on my phone. So anyway, I think hopefully you heard me go over the 2020 draft class, the 2021 draft class for the Titans. Caleb Farley, Dylan Radunz, Monty Rice, Elijah Molden, Des Fitzpatrick, Rashad Weaver, Racy McMath, Brady Breeze. I mean, those are terrible, terrible. Now, 2022, which was his, final one, as of right now, sounds not quite as horrible, because there are still several guys on the team and a couple who have been good. It's Treylon Burks. Huge bust. Huge bust. Hopefully he can now be good as a number 3 receiver behind Hopkins and Ridley. That's the expectation. That's the hope. We'll see. Number 2, Roger McCreary. Actually a good pick. Has turned into a good player. Number 3, Nick Petit-Frere, a guy who looked pretty good as a rookie, but then I don't know what happened last year. Might still be expected to be our starting right tackle next year. Then also round 3, Malik Willis, then Hassan Haskin, then Chig Okonkwo, who's been up and down, Kyle Phillips, who is made of glass, Theo Jackson, and Chance Campbell. That's the draft. I mean, these are horrible, horrible draft classes. And the only good draft class he really had was the Jeffrey Simmons, A.J. Brown, Nate Davis one, which also had Amani Hooker and David Long in it. That was 2019, and I think that draft class basically kept his job safe for another couple of years, but then it was just horrible. Anyway, the point is that I was trying to get at with all of this is, even at the time of that draft, I might say, I'm not sure about that. But then a couple of days will go by and I'll convince myself that, okay, maybe these guys are going to be okay. Maybe this will work out. Maybe whatever. But you'll convince yourself for however you need to that, my team's going to be okay. And these moves maybe were good moves. And so it's hard to sometimes separate what's that versus what's objectively true. But I will say, I feel like, objectively speaking, I love almost every move that we've made this offseason. I love Calvin Ridley. I love the L'Jarius Sneed addition. I really like Lloyd Cushenberry, verging on love there. Even though he's not a great player, we need all the help we can get to improve that offensive line. He's good. He's young. He's great pass protector. I really like that move. The what's his name, Murray, the linebacker that we signed, I felt like he's not Kenneth Murray. He's okay. It's definitely going to be a downgrade from Azeez Al-Shire, but if you compare the contract that Al-Shire got from the Texans versus what we paid for this guy, it's a huge difference. There's no way we needed to give Aziz, as much as I like Aziz Al-Shire, there was no way we needed to give him the contract that they gave him. They overpaid him. And then I didn't even know until a couple days ago that we had signed also a good defensive lineman, interior sort of defensive lineman, and Jonathan Franklin Myers, I think it was, right? Or no, it was Sebastian Joseph Day. That's who it was. Another good, sort of veteran addition, not a splashy move, but, filling a need, adding depth. So I love most of these moves. I love a couple. I really, really like most. And the Tony Pollard one, I like him as a player. The fit is what didn't seem to make sense when we've already got Spears. But I'm excited about it. And honestly, I played a little bit of Madden with both running backs. I put him on my Madden team as well. And it's fun to play 2-back shotgun, the split backs with having both of those guys back there. So maybe that's what we're going to do in real life some. And in fact, it probably is. And it'll be good to have two versatile guys who can play 3 downs in the modern NFL. I like it. So, anyway, I love the moves that we've made so far. What I was actually trying to get into and was hoping to talk about was what I think is going to happen in the draft this year, but I don't know if I'm going to have time or not. I'm already almost aware. I got to get started actually working. So, I'm going to take a really quick break. Actually, I don't know. Let me think. I'm not going to have time to talk about everything I wanted to. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and take a break now. I will finish this up this evening, and that'll give me plenty of time to discuss the draft. I've got some predictions. I'll do basically a mini mock draft of what I expect will happen and what I think will be the best for some of these teams, especially my Titans. And that'll give me plenty of time to talk. So I will be back in what for you will be several seconds, what for me will be several hours, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Alrighty, hello friends, back again. Welcome to this afternoon, evening edition of Talking Sports at Work. So, it is still raining outside, but overall I've had a pretty good day. I got done relatively early again on purpose, which I've been having to do that a lot lately, but today I'm doing it because Sissy, my little baby girl Anna Jo, has her dance class this evening, and even though I can't really watch it, it's weird that for some reason they keep the kids like in a separate room and make the parents wait out in the lobby. And I mean, I understand, that parents would be a big distraction, and these are all little kids, like she's only 3, but at the same time it's just weird, and I don't know, stupid. I don't like that, but that's the way they do it. And it's just like this little 6-week, I think, dance camp thing sort of, and she was pissed off. She had the first one last week. She said she didn't really like it because they didn't let her do ballet, and because I guess it's like a mix of ballet and tap and hip hop. I don't know how they're supposed to combine all of these things with 3-year-olds, but that's what the thing is. And but she was mad because she only wants to do ballet, and that's kind of been what I've planned on her doing since before she was born. And I guess she's just heard me talking about it so much, and that's what's in her mind. That's what she wants to do. So anyway, I told her if she just goes ahead and finishes this first little dance camp thing, this could be her introductory dance course, and if she finishes it, then we'll put her in regular ballet classes, and that's the plan. So but anyway, my ex-wife would normally be picking the kids up and taking her there, but she's got a thing this evening, and so my former mother-in-law, whatever, their nana, is picking them up and taking them, and I have to meet her up there and sort of relieve her. So yeah, that's why I was having to hurry today and get done early. And yeah, that kind of shit happens a lot, where for one reason or another I'm having to get back early, and I'm not crazy about it always, because I'm losing hours, and plus it makes it look like my route is easier than it really is, because I'm really good at this. I mean, it's not hard. You take the shit to the address on the box. It's not hard. Some people make this out to be they overcomplicate things. And when it's your job and you get into the habit, you can sort of complain about it and overcomplicate it. And that's what I always tell my coworkers and stuff. So, man, this isn't hard. You take if you look at the address on the box, you take it there. That's it. That's this job. Anyway, excuse me. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so anyway, getting done a little early today, and that happens. It's not as bad in the winter because there's not as much going on, but spring, they've got baseball, which we're not doing baseball this year, but now we've got Sissy's dance class, Jack has soccer, and then after this, they're going to have football, and so, it's just always stuff going on. So I, for one reason or another, have to try to get back early pretty regularly. And anywho, so I'm off tomorrow, and that is good. That'll give me a chance to do my schoolwork, work on the novel, which I'm getting back to and really started putting some effort back into, and I'm excited about that again, and work on the YouTube channel, whatever. I don't know why I'm going on about my personal life. That's not, I guess, why you were listening to this. You're listening to hear my stupid opinions on sports, which, speaking of, I forgot, when I was talking about the NFL rule changes earlier today, there was another good one, and that is coaches now will have the ability, have a third challenge. So if one of their first two challenges is successful, then they could have a third challenge, which makes so much sense. I don't know why it's taken them this long to implement that, but it is frustrating to see, a coach in a poorly officiated game, challenge one call, they overturn it, and then they have to challenge another call at some point, and it's still questionable, but the call stands, even though, maybe it's not irrefutable evidence. But so now, even if something else happens ridiculous before the last 2 minutes, they can't challenge it. So now it's good to see that they're fixing that. So even if, as long as they get one challenge right, they can get a third one in the game. So that's another good change. Anywho, so what I was really wanting to do this entire episode was kind of go through what I've been thinking about with the draft, and I'm still going to do, like I said, I'm still going to do another 1 or 2 mock drafts, but for now I'm just going to go over sort of like my mini mock draft, what I'm expecting to happen, because we all know what's going to happen at number 1. That's no mystery. The draft is really going to start at 2 and 3 in this. Now the expectation is obviously Caleb Williams is and should be going number 1. I am not, I don't hate Justin Fields. I actually really liked him in his draft, but he has not lived up to the hopes. And my thinking is, if a guy has not shown to be your franchise quarterback by year 3 or 4, he's not your guy. I know that from very recent personal experience with the 4.5 years that we gave Marcus Mariota. Now, that's not to say he can't go be successful somewhere else. I hope he can. I hope he does. But, for now, he can't even seem to beat out an aging Russell Wilson. But that's a whole other topic. Anyway, we know what's happening at 1. Number 2 is where things are interesting, because I am still firmly of the belief that Drake May appears to be the second best quarterback prospect in the draft. My opinion on that has not changed. And this sort of thing happens every year. As we get closer to draft time, opinions change, people overthink things, people outsmart themselves, especially the experts, the writers, the media people, they're going to overthink this stuff, and because that's their job, they spend over 40 hours a week analyzing this stuff and looking at this stuff and thinking about it and talking about it and writing about it. And so there's really only so much you can do, with 32 picks, because that's really the bulk of what everybody's interested in is the first round. You don't really look at mock drafts beyond the first round. Even though a lot of people do them, everybody's really interested in what happens in round 1. So of course these guys are going to overthink this stuff, and I think GMs and front office people do that as well. And what seems to be happening here is Jayden Daniels has surpassed Drake May as sort of the consensus number 2 quarterback. I do not agree with that. Jayden Daniels, I think, is a really great college quarterback. I don't know that that's going to going to translate as well to the NFL. I know he has the arm, and he's not just a running quarterback. He reminds me a lot of Lamar Jackson, honestly, and we see that that worked beautifully. Obviously, you know, two-time MVP now, but he's a unicorn. That's not the standard, and it feels to me like this might be, you know, a year or two after Mahomes broke through in the NFL and took the NFL by storm, we started seeing all these teams sort of looking for the next Mahomes. That's why Trey Lance was drafted so high. That's why Jordan Love was drafted so high. These guys that have those same characteristics. And I wonder now if some teams aren't sort of looking for the next Lamar. But Jayden Daniels can be good. He's definitely worth, you know, a top half of the first round pick probably. I just don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to overanalyze that. The point is, I still think Drake May is the second best. But given what Washington is doing with Cliff Kingsbury now as the offensive coordinator, and the fact that the prevailing thinking seems to be they are going Jayden Daniels, I'm going to assume that's what they're doing. Now, really quickly, let me. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna pause real quick, and we'll just do this whole thing as its own segment. I'll be right back. Alrighty, hey friends, back again. Thank you for the little pause there. So I just had to stop for a second and get a drink, and I wanted to check out something, the mock draft too, because I haven't really looked lately, but there is Mel Kiper's got his post free agency mock draft out now, and I was looking at it, and it's really sort of the ideal scenario, I think, for the Titans. And it's really almost exactly in line with what I had as well as for my mock draft, even before free agency. So that's pretty interesting. It makes me feel pretty good about my own predictions, even though, yeah, these are all predictions, but Kuiper's Kuiper. So anyway, it seems to be that that the Commanders are going Jayden Daniels at 2. That's the thinking. Now, I did hear something really interesting on the radio today that I don't know, I guess it was the Commanders GM put it out there that they actually like JJ McCarthy. I think that's just smoke. I think that's them just sort of trying to bullshit out there, you know, just to I mean, this kind of stuff always happens as we get closer to the draft. You know, GMs put false stuff, misinformation sort of out there, you know, to help them gain an advantage or to keep things, you know, secret as to what their real intentions are. But we know that McCarthy has jumped up draft boards. I mean, he wasn't even thought to be a first round pick up until, you know, about a month ago. But he has jumped up draft boards, and it's possible now the odds shot up after this, whatever this conversation was, and this report, his odds shot up to him having the, like, third best odds, or it was really close. Now, it was closer before that he would be picked second overall. And if you can't tell, I'm talking really fast. I've had a lot of caffeine today, really too much. I shouldn't have done that, but I do it a lot. Excuse me. So, the thinking now, though, is that excuse me, sorry again. I think I need a cough drop. I've been told that I clear my throat too frequently whenever I'm doing this. And honestly, I do that not just on the podcast. I do that a lot in life. And I didn't even realize it until a few years ago when my now ex-wife said something about it. But I do. For some reason, I have a lot of mucus, I guess. And, you know, when I'm talking, it becomes an issue. Anyway, I'm really now just sort of talking to fill the air while I get a cough drop out. And now, cough drop is out of the bag, cough drop is out of the wrapper, and cough drop is in my mouth. So anyway, we're going to put Jayden Daniels at number 2. At number 3, the Patriots are also saying that they are not definitely going quarterback, but I think that's the ideal scenario for them because, again, I think Drake May is the second best quarterback in this draft. So if he is still there at 3, I think that is definitely, they should just go ahead and run that card up there, not even think about it. And then the same goes for Arizona at number 4. A lot of talk is going on there about will they trade back. But the thing is, they already acquired a lot of assets from last year with the Texans trade. Now, that pick that they got from the Texans didn't turn out to be as good as they expected because Houston was better than everyone expected. But still, they got their first-round picks, so they have 2 first-round picks this year, including 4 overall. I think they got a couple of second round picks out of it as well. So it's not like they have a real need for more draft capital at this point. I think they should just, again, not overthink this. You've got a generational talent, a can't miss guy at the wide receiver position. Just take him. And I think that's what they will do, unless Minnesota or Las Vegas, or Denver just comes calling with a crazy an offer they can't refuse, in which case maybe they will. But I'm saying that Arizona is probably going to just go Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, at number 5, this is where I think things, at least for me, from my perspective, get a little uncertain. Now, in my first mock draft, I had them. Who did I have them taking? I think I had them taking Malik Neighbors, or no, I think I had them actually taking Dallas Turner, who I believe is the best edge rusher in this draft, and would be the top defensive player, or the first defensive player taken. And I think if Jim Harbaugh's sitting there at 5 and he's able to take his pick of any defensive player he wants, I would not be surprised at all to see him do it. But, at that point, I also thought that they were going to trade Khalil Mack, and they have not done that. So if they still have Mack and Bosa, then there wouldn't be much, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for them to draft Dallas Turner, given their other needs. Because now they have a lot of needs on offense. Keenan Allen's no longer there. Mike Williams is no longer there, I don't think. Austin Eckler's no longer there. So basically their entire skill position group is gone. So with that being the case, if they see a guy, if they're sitting there and Malik Neighbors is still on the board, I think they're happy with that. But now this is another position where a trade could happen. But at this point, just, thinking that things go sort of chalk, I see them taking Malik Neighbors. He is outstanding. And most years, I think he would be the number 1 receiver on most draft boards. It just so happens that there's an unbelievable talent like MHJ there this year. But, anyway. So then you go to 6. Now, this is another position where we've heard a quarterback could be taken. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, they're sticking with Daniel Jones for at least another year. I think they're just in this sort of purgatory where they've given him this contract and they are still hoping. They're kind of in a similar position as what we were with Mariota for years. Like, you know that he can be good. You want him to be good, but I've never been a fan of Daniel Jones, but given their situation, I cannot see them taking a quarterback here unless one just unexpectedly falls into their lap, one of the top 3 guys. And that's not going to happen. So the Giants then could go a number of ways. That would be also assuming that the Chargers go wide receiver or offense. I think now might be the time where you see a Dallas Turner, a Jared Verse, a Terrion Arnold, the top defensive player, whichever one they like most, go right there to New York. So I'm just for the sake of doing my little mini mock draft, sure, I'll say, now I saw Mel Kiper actually has them taking Rome Odunze. That would not be a bad pick. I'm not a huge fan of his. Not as much as it seems like some people. Like, I think there's MHJ is clear number 1, Neighbors is clear number 2, and then I think there's sort of a drop-off after that. But the thinking seems to be that he's up there with those other guys. That's the prevailing thinking right now among the experts. So we'll say that they take Dallas Turner. That is an area that's a need for them. They can have their pick of defensive players. I think that would not be surprising at all. I think that would be the best way for them to go. And this is, again, sort of the ideal scenario for the Titans, because now you've got the guy we want the most, who is Joe Alt, still sitting there. And I don't think this is just wishful thinking on my part. It does seem like this is the most likely way things are going to shake out. Now, here's what I'm getting at with all of this. And because I don't even know if I'm going to go beyond my Titans, because what I'm trying to get to with all of this is there are 2 options if things shake out this way. A, you just go ahead and take Joe Alt, a guy with Pro Bowl, All-Pro potential, who's polished, who's only 21 years old, who's got everything you could want for a franchise building block left tackle. you just go ahead and do that, and you don't think too much about it. The other option would be you trade back, which in this situation, you're not going to trade back that much. You're probably only going to go back 4, 5, or 6 spots because the people who are going to be calling are going to be Minnesota at 11, the Raiders at, or wait, no, I think the Broncos are at 12, and then the Raiders are at 13. And you got to think that the Broncos in particular, and the Raiders, but especially Broncos with Sean Payton, would be wanting to jump ahead of Minnesota and get a J.J. McCarthy or whoever. At this point, the assumption is it's McCarthy. So depending on what that offer is, that might be the best way to go for us. Because let's say they call and they offer us the 12th overall pick and their second round pick this year to move up 5 spots. I honestly think we should take that because they go up to 7. They take, we'll say J.J. McCarthy, but then you've got the Falcons sitting there at 8. They are pretty good on the off. They're probably going to go defense. That might be a Jared Verse, or if Dallas Turner's still there, Terrion Arnold. That's the way they probably go. At 9, the Bears, with their second first-round pick, will probably take a receiver or a defensive player. They've already taken their quarterback, obviously, at number 1. Now, the Jets would be the one that I would be worried about. That would probably be where Joe Alt would go if we did trade back, because they need to protect Aaron Rodgers, and if he's still there at 10, I would think he would go there. So let's say the Jets take Joe Alt at 10. Now you've got the Vikings. Did they take Michael Penix? What do they do? I don't know, but they don't need they don't need tackles. They've got 2 really good tackles. Hey, friend, sorry about the interruption there. I got a call. Anyway, so what I was saying was the Jets would probably take Joe Alt in this scenario. The Vikings, I don't know which way they go, but it's definitely not going to be tackle. So then we are sitting there at 12. And Olu Fashanu, however you say it, still on the board. So we've still got one of those 2 blue chip left tackle options. Now it seems like Joe Alt has sort of surpassed him among most of the experts as the top tackle, but up until a month ago, everybody believed that Fashanu was the best, and he still has the highest ceiling, it feels like, but he does have some areas to clean up. Anyway, it still, to me, feels like there are 2 clear top tackles in this draft, and it's Alt and Fashanu. And then there are a lot of other good options there in the first couple of rounds of this draft for tackle. But let's say things shake out like this. We trade back with the Broncos. We get 12 and their second round pick, which would be awesome. And we still get one of the best prospects in the draft. I think that would be an ideal scenario for us as well. So really the good news is here that the Titans are in a really good position, it feels like right now, to either go ahead and take the top tackle on the board or to capitalize on that 7th pick, trade back, acquire more draft capital, and still get one of the top tackles in the draft. So I feel like there are 2 possibly really good options, but a lot's still going to change between now and then. We've still got another month before the draft actually happens, and, we don't know if that would even be a possibility. Excuse me, but anywho, it feels like the reason why I guess this is so interesting to me right now is because up until a couple of days ago, I would not have even thought at all that we should trade back. But the way things are looking right now, and the possibility that we could trade back and get more draft capital and still get one of those top 2 guys, it's a very, very appealing possibility. Now, what would the offer be? I don't know. But you got to think that if they are looking to trade up and get a franchise quarterback, they'd probably be willing to give up a second-round pick to do that, right? I know it's only 5 spots, but it's jumping ahead of Minnesota. It's keeping anybody else away, and it's getting the guy you want. I think they would be willing to give up a second-round pick and maybe more, maybe a 2 and a 5 or something. And given that we don't have a third-round pick this year, it's definitely something that you got to consider if there's an opportunity to acquire more draft capital and go ahead and continue to build this roster, which they've already done a great job, as I mentioned earlier, in free agency and trading for Snead. And there's reason to believe that Ran Carthon is going to do a great job in the draft because he did last year. You know, it seems like he really hit those first three picks out of the park last year with, a solid Pro Bowl caliber left guard in the first round, a franchise quarterback in the second round, and a potential star running back, a guy who's at least a really good third down running back and provides a spark and might be, a good all around running back in the third round. Now, again, we've only seen a little. It's too early to really know for sure about any of those guys, but that's the way it seems right now. So it seems like Ran Carthon did a great job in his first draft, and there's reason to believe that he will again. He's done a great job in free agency. He's definitely shrewd and a good operator when it comes to trades. There's really reason to be optimistic, and overall, as a whole, there's reason to be optimistic for Titans fans. And I've really always said that, and maybe this is obvious, but the three most important factors for the success of an NFL franchise: number one, your quarterback; number two, your coach; number three, your GM. And that may be obvious, but it feels like we might have those three in place. And, it's funny, I was saying the same kind of thing a couple of months ago about a different coach, thinking that, Mike Vrabel was still going to be around. But we see how that happened. And you guys know, long-term listeners will know that I was shocked and just could not believe we did that. But, it seems like we got a good one to replace him, and we're moving into the 21st century. We're going to be more offensive-minded, more quarterback-centric, which is the way the league is. And honestly, every offensive coach from that coaching tree has been successful so far. The only one that I can think of that's from that Shanahan-McVay tree that has failed is Brandon Staley, and he was a defensive guy. But you look at Mike McDaniel, you look at Zach Taylor, you look at Shanahan and McVay themselves. D'Amico Ryans, who was a defensive guy, is really good in Houston. Robert Saleh, also a defensive guy, still sort of, uncertain with him. But Kevin O'Connell, I think, also comes from that tree. And it's really just sort of taking over the league. And there's reason to believe that Brian Callahan's going to be the next really good one in that vein of those guys. But anyway, so if that is but all of these we're still unsure about because all of these are still relatively new. Brian Callahan's brand new. Will Levis, we've only seen for not even half of a season so far, and Ran Carthon's only in his second year. But so far, most of the indications, most of the evidence, what we've seen so far, it looks good, and there is reason to be hopeful about all three of those guys. Anyway, I am going to stop talking now. I hope everyone has had a great Tuesday. I want to thank everybody for listening. You guys are wonderful. I can't believe that you want to listen to me ramble, but I do appreciate it. And I'll be back again either tomorrow or later this week in either on here on the podcast or on the YouTube channel doing something. So anyway, love you. Bye.